Thank you, Prabhu. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Good morning, devotees. So today we are going to cover, verses 3:21, 3:31, 21 through 24. That is the third canto, 31st chapter, verse number 21 through 24. And let's get started with verse number 21 first. Tasmat aham vighata viklava uddharasya atmanam ashutamasah shuhardatmaneva bhuyo yatha vyasanam itadaneka mami bhavishyat upasadita vishnupada. Synonyms: tasmat, therefore; aham, I; vigata, seized; viklava, agitation; udharishya, ye; shall deliver; atmanam, myself; ashu, quickly; tamasaha, from the darkness; shuhradaya atmana, with friendly intelligence; eva, indeed; bhuya, again; yatha, so that; vyasanam, plight; etat, this; aneka randhram, entering many wombs; ma, not; me, my; bhavishyat, may occur; upasadita, placed in my mind; Vishnupada, the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu. So, translation, therefore, without being agitated anymore, I shall deliver myself from the darkness of nations with the help of my friend, dear consciousness, clear consciousness. Simply by keeping the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu in my mind, I shall be saved from entering into the wombs of many mothers for repeated birth and death. So beautiful, right? Then purport. The miseries of material existence begins from the very day when the spirit soul takes shelter in the ovum and sperm of the mother and father. They continue after he is born from the womb, and then they are further prolonged. We do not know where the suffering ends. It does not end, however, by one's changing his body. The change of body is taking place at every moment, but that does not mean that we are improving from the fetal condition of life to a more comfortable position. The best thing, therefore, is to develop Krishna consciousness. Here it is stated, Upasadita Vishnupada. This means realization of Krishna consciousness. One who is intelligent by the grace of the Lord and develops Krishna consciousness is successful in this life because simply by keeping himself in Krishna consciousness, he will be saved from the repetition of birth and death. The child prays that it is better to remain within the womb of darkness and be constantly absorbed in Krishna consciousness, rather than to get out again and fall a victim to illusionary energy. The illusory energy acts within the abdomen as well as outside the abdomen. But the trick is that one should remain Krishna conscious. And then the effect of such a horrible condition cannot act unfavorably upon him. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that one's intelligence is his friend, and the same intelligence can be his enemy. Here also the same idea is repeated. Shurdat Manaiva, friendly intelligence. Absorption of intelligence in the personal service of Krishna and full consciousness of Krishna always are the path of self-realization and liberation. Without being unnecessarily agitated, if we take to the process of Krishna consciousness by constantly chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, the cycle of birth and death can be stopped for good. It may be questioned herein how the child can be fully Krishna conscious within the womb of the mother without any paraphernalia with which to execute Krishna consciousness. It is not necessary to arrange for paraphernalia to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu. The child wants to remain within the abdomen of his mother and at the same time wants to become free from the clutches of Maya. One does not need any material arrangement to cultivate Krishna consciousness. One can cultivate Krishna consciousness anywhere and everywhere, provided he can always think of Krishna. The Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, can be chanted even within the abdomen of one's mother. One can chant while sleeping, while working, while imprisoned in the womb, or while outside. This Krishna consciousness cannot be checked in any circumstance. The conclusion of the child's prayer is, let me remain in this condition, although it is very miserable. It is better not to fall a victim to Maya again by going outside. So this is verse number 21. And we are going to read the other 3 verses, and they are like, they have two do not have a purport, and one has a short purport. So verse number 3:31-22. Kapilo vacha evam krita garbhe dashamasya sthuvan rishihi sadya shipati avachinnam prasuyati sutimarutah. Kapilah uvacha, Lord Kapila said, evam, thus, kritamatihi, desiring, garbe, in the womb, dashamase, 10-month-old, stuvan, extolling, rishi, the living entity, sadhya, at that very time, shipati, propels, avachinnam, turned downwards, prashuthye, for birth, suti marutaha, the wind for childbirth. Lord Kapila continued, the 10-month-old living entity has these desires even while in the womb. But while he thus extols the Lord, the wind that helps parturition propels him forth with his face turned downwards so that he may be born. And then we have a verse 30-23. Tenavshrishta sahasa kritva vak shira aturaha vinishkramati krachena niruchvaso hataha smriti tena, by that wind, avas rishtaha, pushed downwards, sahasa, suddenly, kritva, turned, avak, downwards, shira, his head, atura, suffering, vinish kramati, he comes out, krichena, with great difficulty, niruchavasa, breathless, hata, deprived, smriti, memory. And then there's a short translation and purport. Pushed downwards all of a sudden by the wind, the child comes out with great trouble, head downwards, breathless, and deprived of memory due to severe agony. The word krichena means with great difficulty. When the child comes out of the abdomen through the narrow passage, due to the pressure, the breathing system completely stops, and due to the agony, the child loses his memory. One can imagine what the pangs of birth are like. The child remains for 10 months in that horrible condition within the abdomen, and at the end of 10 months, he's forcibly pushed out. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord points out that the person who is serious about advancement in spiritual consciousness should always consider the 4 pangs of birth, birth, death, disease, and old age. The materialist advances in many ways, but he is unable to stop these 4 principles of suffering inherent in material existence. And verse number 24. Patito bhuvi ashrin mishre vishta bhur iva cheshtate ruruyati gate gyane vipritam gatim gataha patitaha, fallen, bhuvi, on the earth, ashrik, with blood, mishraha, smeared, vishta bhuhu, a worm, iba, like cheshtate, he moves his limbs. Roruyati, cries loudly. Gate, being lost. Jnani, his wisdom. Viparitam, the opposite. Gatim, state. Gataha, gone to. The child thus falls on the ground, smeared with blood, stool and blood, and plays just like a worm germinated from the stool. He loses his superior knowledge and cries under the spell of Maya. So we have like these 4 verses covered today. And so let's get started. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so we are covering some verses from before and some from today, and actually all these verses are very much related. The first verse was the prayers of the, Jiva when he's still in the womb. And the last 3 verses is the suffering of the Jiva when he comes out. So both of them, and actually all these purports are pretty much related. Kapila Muni is speaking for giving instruction to his mother. And basically, the very first verse is talking about the jiva, who's the devotee jiva, I would say, who is actually praying in the womb of his mother. And previously also it was described like how the devotee, how much suffering he's undergoing in his mother's womb. And so he does not want to come out. He's a devotee, and he says that. He says that I don't want to even come out, and I want to actually deliver myself from nations, through my consciousness. And because I know that simply if I keep Vishnu's lotus feet in my mind, then I will not go through this whole repeated birth and, this whole repeated birth and death and, coming back to this material world again and again. And Prabhupada actually in his purport, he very nicely he explains that the day the ovum and the soul takes shelter of the ovum and the sperm, that is the day he's born in the womb, that day itself miseries of material existence actually start. And even when the change of body happens, that really doesn't stop. And the only way in which it can be avoided, if you take shelter of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, Lord Vishnu, surrender, and that's really the only way. So the child, as soon as he comes out, he becomes a part of Maya. And so the trick is, of course, he says that one should always remain Krishna conscious. And Prabhupada has mentioned that actually Maya, nobody can actually get over Maya once they are in the material existence. And then, of course, Prabhupada goes on to say that the Hare Krishna Mahamantra is the only way in which we can stop the material birth and death, and because it gives us Krishna consciousness. And then child, when he concludes his prayer, he says, let me remain in this condition, this miserable condition in my mother's womb, because it is better that I don't fall into Maya's clutches. At least just remain in the womb, don't come out at all. And we'll discuss this a little bit more in detail. Now I'm just actually highlighting the main points of the purports. And then in 22, of course, it says, how the 10-month-old living entity, he's praying, but then when then the time comes for him to take birth, and then so his face turns downwards so that he may be born. But what happens is that there's a lot of pressure because he has to come through a very narrow passage, and so he's under great difficulty. And sometimes what happens is that some may even, may not even survive that, some children. But, even the children who actually survive, their memory, they do lose their memory, like maybe previous lifetimes or so on. And Prabhupada says that, one who is serious about Krishna consciousness should always consider that, okay, that there are these four miseries of material life, that is birth, death, there'll be disease, and there'll be old age. And then, of course, next verse, Prabhupada goes on to say that the child then falls into the ground. He's smeared with stool, he's smeared with blood, and, he loses at that time when he comes to material life, he loses his knowledge and he just falls into the ground and under the spell of Maya. So, I'm going to just discuss some points of this. There's a devotee who told Prabhupada, that spiritual life is so difficult, that but Prabhupada, what Prabhupada's answer was, yeah, spiritual life is difficult, but actually material life is impossible. Because, in material life, at the end, we do not take back anything with us. The wealth doesn't go, the relationships doesn't go. But at least if we have a spiritual life, we develop love for Lord Krishna. And then Prabhupada says, why go after this whole repeated birth and death? Let us pack our bags and just go back home, back to Godhead in this life itself. And the main thing in here is the main thing in these purports is that Prabhupada is trying to give a very pessimistic view of material life. And in Bhagavad Gita also he says, actually in Bhagavad Gita 13.18 to 12, he says that one should try to understand the distress of accepting birth, death, old age, and diseases. The suffering, the jiva suffering in the womb of the mother and all that, it has been graphically described. Even at the time of death, there are all kinds of suffering. So as far as disease and old age, everybody gets practical experience, he says. So he says, unless we have a pessimistic view of this material life, considering the distresses of birth, death, old age, and disease, there is no impetus for our making advancement in spiritual life. So, if you're enjoying material life and if you're into like a lot of material life, that you have to make a lot of advancement in material life, and neglecting your spiritual life, then that's not going to make you move towards the goal of the human life. So this human life we get after so much of difficulty. And so we have to be very cognizant of the fact that, we have to make our attempt to get out of this birth and death cycle, especially as Prabhupada is mentioning that, there's so many miseries over here. So this actually even reminded me of, a small story of Yudhishthir. When he was in exile, he met the god of death, Yamraj, in disguise. And actually his brothers met him before. And, there's a long story, but I'm going to tell you only Yudhishthir's part. And, one of the questions the Yaksha asks Yudhishthir is, what is the most surprising thing in this world? And Yudhishthir says, at every moment, people are dying. And those who are alive are witnessing this phenomenon. And yet they do not think that one day they have to die. What can be more astonishing than this? So, so it's a very it's very hard to keep this in mind like 24 hours a day. I mean, for most of the day, even when we are awake, because we get entangled in so many different things. We get entangled in, um, you know, we don't like sometimes some things. We don't feel comfortable with certain things. We don't feel comfortable with situations. And our thought always goes to, okay, this is, it goes more to the suffering than it goes to Krishna sometimes. And so the whole idea of suffering is actually to take us to Krishna. And if it can be utilized in this way, then it is a good use of your human life. Otherwise, if the suffering becomes just like suffering or involved in merrymaking, then you kind of lost the value of human life. But if all the suffering in the material world can make you go towards Krishna in your daily life, then that's what, like, that is what would be useful in your life. And it's not only like the thing is that we all come under Maya. Like even Sita Devi, she came under Maya, right? When she saw the golden deer. We know Arjun came under Maya for Gita when he didn't want to fight, and then Lord Krishna had to explain him the Bhagavad Gita, and the Bhagavad Gita at surrender. So finally, I'm going to just, actually, we don't have too much time today, but I'm going to just, because these verses, Prabhupada has so much told us that what the suffering is, the suffering of the jiva when he's being born, the suffering of the jiva who doesn't want to come out of the womb. Actually, just to digress a little, I did think of Sukadev Goswami, how he didn't want to come out for 12 years. Somehow that had come to mind too. He did want to get under Maya. So all the suffering in the world. So how can we just get out of this? Is just through surrender to Lord Krishna. And I thought I'll just end with a story like of surrender, and how that is really the goal of life. And this is a nice story or to end in also. So this is a story about Jagannath Puri, and it is widely celebrated actually, and among the devotees it's shared also widely. And this is a story of in long ago in Jagannath Puri, there was a Panda. His name was Arjun Mishra. And every day he read the Bhagavad Gita actually. And so he was known as Gita Panda. And he was a devout follower of Lord Jagannath. And he was fully surrendered to the Lord, and he was dependent upon him. Whatever worldly things happened, they didn't impact him. And they were very poor. The family was very poor. They didn't even have food to eat. And Arjun Mishra or Gita Panda used to go and beg for food, And somehow he had 3 children. He had his wife. He had to feed. They didn't know where the next day's meal was coming on, but somehow they were pretty well fed, And then what happened is, one week there was this lot of rainfall in Puri, lot of rainfall, and he couldn't go to begging, and the food supply dwindled, and his wife got really angry, with him. And of course, Jagannath, Gita Panda took it as an opportunity. See, this was actually for them. It was such a hard situation because they were not getting food to eat. But Gita Panda, he still took the optimistic view. He said that now I'll get more time to read Bhagavad Gita. Look at that. Like even he turned like a bad situation into good. And he was happy, but his wife was so upset. She's saying, but the children are not getting fed, and you're going around here and there. You're not going here and there for begging, and now we all are hungry. But Gita Panda was very calm, and he showed her a verse from Bhagavad Gita 9.22, in which Krishna says, Ananyas chintayanto mam ye jana pari upasite tesham nitya bhiyukta nam yogashemam vahamiham, means one who always worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form. To them I carry what they lack and I preserve what they have. The wife got so angry that she took that verse and she made 3 lines. She scratched and scratched 3 lines across it. And then suddenly, after some time, there was a knock in the door, and beautiful boys appeared. One was dark complexion, one was white complexion, and they told, wife opened, and they told the wife that, we've got this for you, all this food and everything, and they got large amounts of food, almost to fill the whole storehouse. And they said, actually, Geeta Panda's friend has sent. So wife was very happy, immediate problem got solved. Then she said, okay, why don't you have this prasada also? I'll make a little bit. Huh? So the dark colored child said that, unfortunately, I can't have because you see, my tongue has been cut. And he went away. And so the wife went running to her husband and says, see, our problem is solved. We have so much food. And 2 boys came. And so Geeta Panda at once understood, because he was great devotee of the Lord. He said, did you give them anything to eat? He said, no. But the boy said that he could not eat, the dark boy, because his tongue was cut in 3 places. Then Gita Panda understood, because his wife had scratched, the verse from the Gita 3 times, and the Gita, which comes from the Lord's mouth, was reflected in his tongue. Of course, then they went to Lord Jagannath in the temple and they asked for forgiveness. But there also they saw that Lord Jagannath had 3 spots on his lips. So this is a story of faith. What I'm saying is, there's one bhakta who is totally surrendered to the Lord in good times and in bad times. He is surrendered totally. He's not even looking as the bad time as a bad time. He's just looking as an opportunity of surrender to the Lord. And on the other hand is his wife, who's so much, in so much agony, and so much of agony, and of course ultimately also she also gains faith. So the thing is that there is no other way uh, but to surrender to the divine will, and to surrender to Lord Krishna, and to do the Mahamantra to the best of our ability, since it's the Yoga Dharma, and which was also explained in a lot. Prabhupada explained in the verse 21, a great deal about the Mahamantra. That is the way out of deliverance, and to accept whatever comes in your way, to go with the flow, and to thank the Lord for like good times and bad. And we do not have the understanding really, what is good and what is bad for us. So acceptance of the will of the Lord is very important. And the Maha Mantra actually has been much described in all our teachings, all the books, Chaitanya Charitamrita. It is also given in this Santarana Upanishad I was reading, where Narada was advised by Brahma, actually, that this is the only way for deliverance. So basically, in these purports, the jiva is saying, let me not even come out of the womb, because I'll become, part of Maya. And it's so difficult. And then Prabhupada says, surrender. And, we also heard the story of surrender, I thought, I thought was very beautiful, the Gita Panda's faith in all times, good and bad. And, the rest, of course, was how the agony of the child, like it's not very easy. Material life is not very easy, as Prabhupada says. Spiritual life is difficult, but actually material life is totally impossible. So, so this is all I had for now. If anyone has any questions, comments, additions, please feel free to add right now.
Hare Krishna Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare
Thank you.
Krishna.
Thank you so much for nicely articulating. The way you explain is so clear, very crisp, you say. I love your classes. Mataji, I would like to add, when you were saying, like Srila Prabhupada said, material world is so impossible. So yesterday I was hearing one of Srila Prabhupada's class where he was saying, he was relating how karma determines our next birth. And then he was mainly emphasizing about how this bhakti process is like protecting all the devotees. We devotees also, conceive children, give birth. But since we are discussing about this birth topic, Srila Prabhupada is saying mainly with such a strong point. He was saying for the parents, okay, we are also giving birth, but the purpose of the devotee to give birth to children, to have children, is make them as a devotee. Take this bhakti process. If
Yes.
not, you're killing the children. Very strong statement. And he was like quoting the examples of, Prahlad Maharaj, how Hiranyakashipu was killed. So, yeah, this material world is very, very impossible. Lot of difficulties. At least one solace for us is this bhakti process. At least we are in the safe hand. We know the process. But how good everybody's the percentage of taking it serious is different, right? But
Yes.
at least we know the. I've always heard from my spiritual master says, have the goal and just know where you are and then try to reach the goal. The distance might be different for everyone, but at least we know the process. So that is the only solace, being associating with the devotees and the process we know. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I wanted to add. It's a very strong statement. Even we give birth to children, but raising them as devotees is very, very important. If not, we are killing the children. That's what he very strong statement I heard. So I thought of sharing, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, actually, yeah, that is such a good point, actually. I think actually we are very lucky that somehow we landed up and, got all this knowledge and Srila Prabhupada's, wisdom. I always consider myself also very lucky that somehow I landed up, and got this. Because not everybody gets the chance, Mataji, At least we have the awareness, right? Everything first starts with awareness. Like you said, at least you are aware that you have to bring up the children, you're trying, you bring up the children, because a lot of times the awareness itself is not there, in the general public. And yeah, it's so nicely you explained, Mataji. Very good points. And yeah, I think we are very fortunate actually, because this is really not our home. This is not really our home. And, you know, so Srila Prabhupada, through his writing so nicely has, coached us on this whole bhakti process. And as you said, everybody's at a different stage, and that's okay, because because everybody, all of us are unique, and all of us have our unique journeys in Krishna consciousness according to our talents and propensities. But our goal is like Krishna, right? So that's nice points, Mataji. Yeah. Anybody else? Okay. If not, we stop here. Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.